All right, we are live. Welcome to No NDAs number 6, every,
Woo!
everybody. Joining us from Twitch. I don't know if you're there or not, but that's okay. We're gonna build this shit up. um, so, E, what's been on your mind, man? Like, what's been standing out to you this week?
ooh, ooh. I mean, one thing I've been really excited about this week has been imagination. Remember, I was
Hmm,
telling you about this book I'm reading. So I've been
yeah.
getting through this book that's all about the suppression of our imaginations as a society,
Hmm,
and how we have this view of imagination being something that is, childlike and fluffy and unpredictable and uncertain, and we just have this connotation associated with imagination. But the interesting point that he makes is, like, all these companies and everyone and their mother wants people to be innovative and people to be creative, right? But at the same time, we see imagination as this really fluffy
yeah.
duffy thing. So that's been really cool, just like this book and kind of diving into um, just how. Yo, Bob, what up?
Hey, how
What
you
up,
doing?
Bob?
Good.
Hey, brother. I didn't want to leave you waiting, man.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I'm so glad. Sorry, last week I missed it because I mean my memory. So yeah, I guess.
Yeah, it's
I
just COVID time, man. Like you can't keep track of shit.
How you doing?
You're doing
Good,
good, man.
man. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Really, really good.
Yeah. He was just going into adult imagination. This book he's been reading.
Yeah, so I was just saying that I'm reading this book about imagination, and it's all about how we've suppressed imagination, and even in our own experiences, we can see that, as a kid, just the ability for people to, the ability for children to imagine and create
Mm,
these scenarios and improvise and role play, that somehow, over the trajectory of our life seems to diminish. And this whole book is kind of, the whole premise of it is that that shouldn't be the case, and that we as a society should be designing for and optimizing for imagination, because it is increasingly important, to have any fighting chance of solving these huge global challenges. So
You're
it's a
talking
pretty
to a
good
left.
book.
You're talking to a left-handed. 100% agree.
well,
Nice.
I think it's
Ooh, I
interesting
love that
because
mug, yo.
what is it? Oh,
It's a
Turing.
Turing. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Well, I think it's interesting because like all these companies aim to cultivate creativity, right? But nobody
Yeah.
uses the word imagination, right?
Yeah.
Because it does seem like something that's inconcrete and is reserved for childhood, right? It's like, oh, he's like a very active imagination, when really that's your creative muscles, man.
It
Um,
is.
yeah, I feel like one of the things that when I talk to people about this muscle is I treat it like a muscle. It's like you can train yourself in a gym, right, to get your body into shape, and through some of these creative exercises, you can train your own imagination
For
into
sure.
creating something new. One of the things that I like to do is I'll write down 30 things I'm interested in on a piece of paper, circle 3 of them, and just ideate off of those 3 things as much as I humanly possibly can. Right. And
Wow.
it can be anything. It can be like, I can throw in there, like, I don't know, a nail clipper, right? How do you cross over a clipper, a printer, and autonomous vehicles? Right. And it
Yeah.
forces you to put yourself into this very uncomfortable position, holding all these different ideas in your mind's eye and seeing how they overlap and create these new things. And it's a muscle. It becomes easier. And I even find that my subconscious, as I'm moving throughout the world, is also like cross indexing all this different information to create this, this imagination.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
What's the
Have you
name
heard
of
of
the book?
Scamper? The book is called it's called something about what is and something about what if. So it's called From What Is to What If.
Nice.
Yeah. What's
And
Scamper?
Scamper is a framework it's a design thinking kind of framework to generate new ideas. It's like an idea generation framework kind of thing. But when you were mentioning just like the exercising of creativity and imagination, I thought of Scamper. And yeah, one of the interesting points that the author makes is that in order to create a better future, we have to first imagine better future scenarios. Right? And he gave this example of this town that was the town that he's from, and how they were doing all this. I don't know. They were basically trying to take the town from a 5 to a 10 in terms of how it ran, in terms of how the neighborhood functioned, etc.
Yeah.
And he was saying that, the moment that things really started to, hit that J curve was when the story that people were telling, when the narrative began to change, when there was like a collective reimagining amongst people in this area.
Yeah.
And yeah, dude, it's just the power of the imagination. That, to answer your question, Nick, that is what's been like, that's one of the things that's been on my mind.
It's interesting because one of the things that, even one of the ideas I came up with and put into our board is, this practice I go through where it's manifestation, and everyone throws that word around in like the kind of eye roll, right? It's like, oh, manifest, like what is this? Like some law of attraction shit, right? But what I find is that when I put myself like through my meditation into that emerging future, right? Like when I can see it, feel it, hear it, touch it, and just the feeling that's overcome, I find it impossible to go back. I find it impossible to take a step back into reality because I've already felt what that future is like. And once I'm in that position, the world just catches up to me. It's no longer a question. It's like I'm here, so everything else is going to come into accord with where I'm putting myself. And it even got me on this tail thinking. I'm like, because I have these metaphors that really speak to me around manifestation, around putting myself into that emergent future. And I was thinking, especially with augmented reality coming out, it's like maybe we could create something where you can have your own like sort of manifestation, right, through your own metaphors and your own interpretation of those things. Everyone, and then you have like vision boards and you have like people posting photos. But I think this could go to a whole different level when you start integrating the possibility of AR with manifestation, so you can really like see and feel some of the things that you see in your meditations. I could draw you out the whole thing. Like I've got this grid that pops through me. It's kind of like a fucking like piece of paper that like is just like here. It goes through me, and in that grid are all my contracts. So I'll actually like go through this whole process of holding that thing that I want to create in my hands and then putting it into the grid, and it becomes part of my reality. And dude, the specificity of some of the shit that I put in there that's come to fruition is just fucking crazy. It's like, it feels like there's a direct correlation between me writing, my future, as much as I can, like a story.
Yeah.
Wow.
If only you knew how many, the amount of evidence we have about what you just said, like the law of attraction, actually, it is insane. And people still like, oh yeah, no, that's some like meditation bullshit. It is real, actually. And so I used to study a little bit of physics. And,
really?
And I studied mathematics, actually. I love law of attraction. I fully believe in it. And it starts slowly to make scientific sense. Actually, we start discovering a few things, and my 2 cents, like totally non-scientific in the true world of that thing. But you know how like quantum physics works is like basically we realize that like the tiniest amount of matter you can have, like so tiny particles, they are in every state at the same time. So that's the reality. They are in every state at the same time, meaning if you have like a space, the electron is going to be everywhere on that space. That's called the Schrodinger equation. It gives you the probability of being somewhere, but meaning until you measure, it's everywhere. Even though it's like a tiny percentage, it is there as well. And once you measure, it goes somewhere. So basically your future, because of space-time, right? The future is not like, you're not going through the future like we feel it. It's not like, oh, there is time going towards you, right? It's space-time. So when you think about something, you're trying to measure those probabilities with a more sharper focus, right? In the future. For us, the future is like non-existent yet, but basically you're measuring it, that you're measuring the future,
right,
with your like own tools, and that's how you make it happen. Because on the you tweak your space-time on like local basis, like, oh, I'm gonna go left, and then you end up being like far left where you want it to be, right? So and even though we don't think about it this way, because matter has nothing to do with space-time, it is actually probable that it's called the many world theory. When you think about them, you're actually measuring them locally, and then you actually go towards that world. And it's a valid theory. It's called the many world, meaning when you think about something, yourself, you're going towards this path. You're only conscious of one path, but there you have another self going towards like all other paths actually. But you're only conscious of the path you choose, and that is kind of the law of attraction. And it starts to make real sense in physics. We have crazy proof. We've had the final proof, like I think 15 years ago. It's called the Bell experiment, and now we just need to make sense about it. So that's super cool what you just said.
Well, it's interesting because you guys are both computer scientists, so I can speak to this. A lot of the fastest databases and even like the new modern web is all going towards static rendering, right? When you static render a website, what you're doing is you're pre-rendering every possible outcome that can be served up by a server, right? In the same way, like these new databases, a lot of them are adopting, when I update the schema, like introduce location, it will pre-render all that information. So it becomes cached, and that's the fastest way to move something from a server into a website, right? I think, going back to the question, is it invented or is it discovered? The fastest way to render all the possibilities in our like little server here on Earth would be to pre-render everything, right? So it's not as crazy when you think about the way the modern web is moving towards static rendering. It makes way more sense to pre-cache every possible outcome of what could possibly happen. You're actually saving computational power, right? You don't have to like recalculate everything in real time. It's like we know all the possible outcomes. So, even the way like everything's moving back to static, it would make sense if our world was already statically rendered, where even on a physics perspective, like every electron exists on this grid in every possible position it possibly could at the same time, right? So you take,
Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
So question, do you think this is why we're nowhere near reaching a general AI? Because I'm just bouncing back on the imagination thing, because a computer doesn't imagine, and that's where all our human knowledge comes from. Like cavemen said, oh, what about those two stones? Let's make tools, right? But he imagined tools, and that's why we became like a little bit smarter, and we went all the way to computers. So do you think imagination is why we don't have general AI? Because right now, machine learning, which is really powerful, is just what we have as a neocortex, a classifier, super powerful classifier, but we don't imagine with the neocortex. Imagination comes from the smaller brain, like the primal brain, which we're not trying to develop right now. So do you think that's also a reason so imagination is not inside computers? We don't have those like bits of data that go crazy?
Well, it's most machine learning in its current format is based in historical data, right? Most of everything that's being learned is based on information that's being fed, and computers can't understand context, right? And they're certainly not great at context switching, right? Imagination means you're creating something that's fully new, right? That's cross-indexing a lot of previous ideas into something completely new. If a machine learns, it's learning based on things that already exist. It's not necessarily cross collapsing that into these novel ideas. That's why I think, everyone is talking about general AI. I think the stepping stone that's already kind of happening is going to be a hybrid relationship between these AI, leveraging the best thing of computers, of indexing that historical data into design, into thinking, into decision making with human imagination. Like we will in a lot of ways be the general AI when we can actually have this hybrid relationship. I think that's going to go on for decades. But to, even if you had all that context, it's going to be, you'd have to create a system where it's collapsing these things into new ideas and accurately explaining those ideas. That's the hardest part. It's like for me to sit down here and like explain to you what the hell farm cloud farming is, right? What the fuck a pop top is, like all these different things. And even if it creates it, it's like even understanding that or bringing it to a level where it applies is going to be, that's a whole other area of consideration. Yeah, it's interesting. But I do think the future is hybrid, and I don't think the hybrid nature is going to be gone anytime soon. Like I think we're going to be working directly with AI and enhancing our superpowers and focusing on what computers are good at versus what humans are good at, right? It's almost like, imagine we tried to turn a human into a computer, right? Like that wouldn't make much sense, would it? It's like you're trying to take something that, like, granted, we have a supercomputer in our brain and make it do 1,000 teraflops per second, and maybe it's just the case that having 1,000 teraflops perspective doesn't translate to being a general AI as a human. Could be a possibility.
Yeah, I believe in the human computer theory, which is we are basically computer. You know, like the processing power of your brain is about, I think, 100 trillion bits per second or something. It's like more powerful than any like cluster of computer. You can take any computers on the planet, add them up, and you don't have the power of your brain. It's insane. It is insane.
Yeah.
You have more neurons than actually stars we can see.
Yeah.
It is fucking insane.
So do you think that the brain is a computer, or do you think that the computer is biomimicry of the brain?
What would be the difference? Basically, what I think is we use word as a way to encode information and transmit. And basically, there is a theory saying, okay, you can encode any information with only two things, 0 and 1, binary. In your brain, what's going on? Your neurons, the words are just electricity. You know, you have like basically your neurons, they go on with 12 volts of power. 0, it means they don't shoot, they don't fire. 12, they fire. And it's so complex that we can make words, we can imagine, and sometimes it's weird because we evolved, right? So we evolved from being like weird reptiles and stuff. So we still have that primal brain, and basically words are our way of communicating. But sometimes we have like feelings that are way deeper, and we cannot really express them with words. And that's where that's what we call law of attraction, intuition, sixth sense, whatever. It's just we don't have enough words to express. And there is a really nice experiment that went on. It's called the split brain. Basically, they cut people's brain in two parts. Like inside, people were still alive, and they were showing them pictures, picture of like a cat on the right eye, and of let's say a shovel on the left one. And basically, you know, the processing unit of your brain is on that side, which is I'm left-handed, so I never know, on the left side. And basically, when you saw the cat on the left side, you could say, oh yeah, right after when they asked you which picture did you see, you could show the cat because you saw it and you had words for it. And then you could also show a second picture, a shovel, but you couldn't explain why. People were making up stuff like, yeah, shovel because you need to shovel the cat's poo and everything. They didn't remember they saw the picture because they had no words. The brain registered everything, but we don't have words. We can only express things we have words for, right? So there are so many things that we cannot express. It's as if we couldn't see them. Do they exist? Do they not exist? That's a philosophical question. But what I mean is they impact us, and we have no idea how to process because we don't understand. We talk to ourselves when we think. So if we don't have words for that, we cannot think about it. And that's what we call intuition from my point of view. And I think, yeah, we're just big computers. We just don't understand ourselves. Like I don't think my Mac knows I'm typing something when I'm writing an email. So I don't think I could understand if there's like a grandmaster doing something, right? You know what I mean? It's like I know I'm not like reducing us to that, but my computer doesn't know I'm writing emails. He doesn't really know what's going on. So the same way, there is the same distance between me and what I believe is the universe and the creator of the universe. So that's kind of like, you know, a mix of.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because our mind is the best graphics processor, the best sound processor, the best visual processor, the best everything processor. You can't beat the brain, as far as we know, right? And the other thing is, you know, even when it comes to like general AI, I think what you're really asking is, when is AI going to impress me? Like, when is AI going to do something that we did not intend it to do, right? But like AI is built in historical data, right? So it's always going to operate within the bounds of its own programming. Like, for all we know, based on what we know about consciousness, we may already have rendered millions of instances of conscious life into the Sims, right? But these guys, they can never step outside of the bounds of that programming. Like if they did, no matter what they do within the context of that specific program, we'd be like, oh, well, we taught them to do that, right? Like I'd love to like just have an ongoing list of, hey, this is novel. That's what it's going to be, right? It's going to be my AI is doing something so novel that has surprised me and has exceeded my expectations in a way it was not trained, right? But the truth is, they're still programs to this day, right? They do what they're trained to do, and it's going to be the point where, where we have this global brain where everything's being cross-indexed, where it creates novel experiences and novelty, and at that point, it's going to be crazy.
Okay, what if we thought we would teach a computer kindness, and then we would train him on really mean stuff, and then we would ask him to like we would train him on mean stuff, and we would ask him in a situation where a human would be kind, even though you would be a bad human would be kind, and we would ask the computer, what would you do? And he would be kind to that person, even though he was only taught once what kindness is, like really like the basics, and then train his whole like life, whatever it means, on mean stuff. And then it would do something kind, and like yeah, that's the right answer because this is kindness, and kindness should be applied there.
Yeah, and in that way, it's very similar to humans. You have people who live these isolated and sheltered lives who've never been exposed, right? Who've never been exposed to some of these real world problems that happen. I was even moving to LA earlier this year. I was surprised by some of the strange situations that my girlfriend found herself in. Right? I've never been a woman in this context of being in this vulnerable state, and I'm unfortunately there's just a couple of very strange situations that she found herself in, and I bear witness to that. So I've never been trained in how to react in those situations with a partner. So in a lot of ways, we're very similar. I've always been trained in like these methods of kindness, this methods of showing love in all these situations. It's very strange when you're met with malice, right? In a lot of ways, you have to like now refactor that into your worldview, right? Where the world dynamically changed. So I guess in a lot of ways, we're not so different from the computer. Like if you're just taught in kindness and in love and hugs, it's like it's very strange when someone tells you to fuck off when you're in a city that maybe not doesn't support those same values. Yeah, yeah, but general AI is interesting, man, because like I think like general means unspecific, right? Like we didn't train it to do this, and now it's doing something we didn't train it to do, and that's going to be an interesting point. Maybe we've already hit it. Maybe there's an example of some shit. There's bugs in systems all the time, right? And that's what's just interesting. It's like it's almost like the bug is going to be the feature of general AI. It's like we built this thing in such a way it's doing something it's not supposed to. Boom, we did it, right? And I guess that's the danger, right? It's like we're waiting for a fucking massive bug to catch us off guard that was doing something it's not intended to do, and that's like the threat of general AI. Which now, like thinking through it that way, it's like, yeah, I kind of agree with the ethos. But yeah, I think we're all general AI. I think we are AI. Honestly,
agreed.
Like we're just running on somebody else's server. Some dude's running a server in his basement right now, and that's how we all popped up. Best case scenario.
Yeah. No, I just think we're seeing the problem from the wrong perspective still nowadays. We're using too many statistical tools, whereas our intelligence comes from a non-statistical. Actually, it comes from like deep down. A nice thing, a nice read. It's pretty short. It's if you Google, was Albert Einstein an artist? I was always wondering because I was in physics and I was like, whoa, that's weird because if he wasn't an artist, what does it mean being an artist? And actually he was. Yeah. Being an artist is just a change of perspective in anything you do. You could be an engineer and be an artist. Basically, for me, Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, they were artists because he kind of changed the perspective of the whole field. Computers were mainly for game at the time. Like I'm not, it's not technically correct, but they changed the perspective of the field. Like Mark Zuckerberg came with the insight of it could be a social thing that everyone will be connected, and boom, of course, like it went a little bit south, but everyone is doing like social things right now, like analytics. We understood like the power of gathering data on social masses, how it means and everything. And same for Einstein. Everyone was thinking you're a good you're a good physicist if you know like the theory of electromagnetism, blah blah blah. This guy just came up with like, hey, what if time is not that intrinsic? Is not intrinsic to the universe. What if it was just something like speed of a car and you can change time? And from that point, he just freaking invented something that we never thought was possible, and to this day we are amazed by the results. So, and basically that really like was Albert Einstein an artist is one of the best thing I've read in a long time.
I would definitely say he was, because like not only did he obviously is like a physics guy in math, he did something, he made so many things for the world, but he also spoke in such beautiful metaphors. He made these concepts of physics and mathematics so approachable by the layman that it can be explained, it can be shared. The theory could be understood by someone who's in grade school, right? And that's kind of in the same way an artist like brings emotion to a piece of work and you resonate with it, like you can actually understand these metaphors in such a way it resonates. But is that it was actually your cousin that had a really epic line on this exact subject. He said, when his cousin's an amazing musician and rapper, and he one time like dropped a line, and I asked him afterwards, I'm like, yo, is that true what you just said? He's like, nah, man, the line isn't there to make you believe something, it's to make you feel something, right? And that's the nature of art. So I guess the question is, when you hear these metaphors that are being expressed by Einstein, even if you don't fully understand what the hell he's saying, does it compel you in a certain direction? And that is the ethos of an artist.
And I also feel like that's a limitation of computers and AI. Right. I think when you start to get into that mode of, that modality of creative thought and creating art and that level of, abstraction and being able to see these, being able to convey messages in that way. And I guess tying it together with the imagination piece and this artist piece and the AI piece, I think, one thing that's been popping up for me while y'all have been talking is just the amount of input that we have versus a computer, right? Like they're just getting the computers are getting one type of historical input, right? Yeah. They're getting one versus we are in a constant dialogue and conversation with the universe at every single moment. Through our senses, through our being, we have so many more inputs, and we're in this grand interaction that I think, I was reading a really good book a couple of years ago that now Cam, my partner, is reading, called A Whole New Mind by Daniel Pink. And it's all about, left brain, right brain, but he's arguing that the people that are going to be the pioneers of the future are these hybrids, right? The people that are able to really leverage, their creativity and hone in on that. And I agree with you, Nick, that like it's this hybrid supplementary approach, right? In terms of how I think AI is going to play a role and will play a role in, and I think how we optimize the power of AI, right? Because I think a lot of the discourse now is really around, it's a threat to humanity. It's going to take jobs. It's going to replace things. And it's like, I really just see it kind of like what you were saying as the supplemental thing, because I don't think it can really ever come close. In my personal opinion, I don't really think it can come close to rivaling what you can derive from human experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you remove the words of that divide times into like pieces, like, oh, I was born, or yesterday. If you think about it, you're just the universe since the Big Bang. We just put ourselves in our life, but hey,
yeah,
you're just the result of the Big Bang. You're the most advanced result of the Big Bang in time, and that's what you are. That's why we're connected. And as you said, it was really spot on with especially with the input we get. When someone like moves in a room and you hear him, like you could close your eyes and someone goes like left, right, and you can like point him where he's going. When you think about it, the sound travels like 310 meters per second. And how you can know where he is, it's because the sound wave is coming this way, hitting you here, touching you, and then here, and then your brain makes the difference of time of like how many milliseconds it took, and you know because of triangulation he's here, 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 and look at how precise. Just play that game. Close your eyes, and someone goes around and just pinpoint where he is in the room. That's your brain computing at a never seen before speed. The difference in millisecond and doing the triangulation to know where you are in space.
You know, now that I think about it, like kind of cross-referencing what you guys are talking about, you know, it'd be a really interesting idea. You know, one thing that makes us who we are is the fact we're mammals, right? You go through these 6 years, you know, I mean, a decade of being raised by your parents, right? Versus these AI systems that are like sprung up in minutes with n number of computational hours in the cloud. It's like, you know, maybe the way we make general AI is we give it those diverse inputs, you know, like a little Tamagotchi, right? Like a little egg type thing you carry around in your pocket where it's getting these diverse inputs and is being raised in a unique way because that unique data set could not have been experienced by another human. That's what makes us unique, right? The fact that you grew up in Brooklyn, I grew up in Detroit. I don't even know where the fuck you're from, Bob, but all of us went through this whole like round of
The Congo.
Yeah, the Congo. Yeah,
I grew up in the Congo. I live in Brussels.
But you know, maybe that's what it is. It's like you have a fully and complete unique data set that you're now collecting that can create something unique. And maybe that motherfucker could have some compelling art because now he has a unique story. People resonate with stories, right? He grew up in Nick Sarafa's pocket while he traveled the world, fucking seeing all these countries. He grew up with Elijah farming, right, and being taught these, you know, that's the thing that when that little egg makes art, that's more compelling, right? Because there's a history, right? It resonates with you because they went through the process of an upbringing versus something that was, you know, done on metal racks across 10 different data centers in America. You can't resonate with that. You're not compelled by it, right? You might be surprised, but it's not gonna move you as would a piece created by a human artist who has a unique story and background, right? If you can copy paste it, it's really hard to feel compelled by it.
We should starve them as well. Starve the computers.
Yeah, just start with a Tamagotchi and let it start collecting data. This is what you should do. You have a little egg, right? This little dude, like this little AirPod case, right? But like make it more egg-like. You guys have seen Black Mirror, and just carry it around with you for all of time is like a Tamagotchi, like a child you're supposed to raise. And then as the AI data gets more evolved, we can then like actually in the back end like evolve all the different experiences it had into that general AI, right? We're admitting to ourselves general AI doesn't exist, but let us collect all of your data and then we'll cross-reference that into the technology when it does exist. I think that would be an interesting product. But I mean, that's what Google and Facebook and these guys are doing anyway, right? They have access to everyone's data. Everyone's thinking. So I think it would be unique to have something where it has all these multiple inputs that isn't just one stream of data. It's like this thing was raised like a human is, and maybe that's the information we need to make it general enough for us to feel compelled by it, for it to resonate with us as humans, to machine.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the thing that still gets me though, I think that's definitely gonna take it from here to here. The thing that I still think that Tamagotchi won't be able to take in is our sensory experience. You know, like, because think about how much of our, you know, innovation, creativity, imagination is derived from, you know, even something like a scent, you know.
Yeah,
like we're getting so many different inputs, right? Or something like feeling the breeze on our skin, right? It's like we're getting all these different inputs.
Yeah.
Do you think there would be a way to encode them, even though it doesn't make sense for a computer, like to represent really what it is by an equation?
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking is like, can we represent like the olfactory system? You know, can we make like a representation of it? I would think so.
You just invented the first draft of subjective code, meaning you compile it on the machine. It's a totally different result because I mean I don't smell the same thing as you do. So basically,
exactly,
subjective
and
coding,
we don't see the same thing.
Totally. Yeah. Oh, that's insane.
Yeah. And that's the crazy thing about being human. Like even if all three of us right now got the same information downloaded, you'd see some different shit, right?
For sure,
Like
totally different.
the encoder's on the local host, man. It's client side,
Yeah.
right? So like the way it's translated is a little different than a general. That's the thing about computers. Like our MacBooks all function the same way, right? They interpret things the same. Right? It was a problem. It's going to be a problem across all three in most cases. We're not fucking with Rails. But if you have a human encoder, it's going to be unique. And I think that's where the ethos of this idea is coming from. It's like to create that unique array of experiences. Now that I'm thinking more about it, one of the things that I really like about, I wear this thing called the Whoop. It's like this very minimalist like activity tracker. You get the hardware for free, but you pay monthly subscription to have access to the platform that aggregates it. So Whoop even says like, hey, we're going to be upgrading our hardware constantly. So don't invest $400 into like a freaking Apple Watch or anything like that. As it's upgrading, you can buy the new hardware. It's all going to be integrated to the back end. For something like this, I imagine it'd be something similar. It's like, okay, you start with listening, you start with encoding, you can start with like how it's oriented in space time, right, from geolocation. And then as the hardware becomes available to feel the breeze in your skin, to smell certain scents, right? You keep the same back end, keep on paying for how it's aggregating, but you continually upgrade that hardware to keep up with all the new senses, which, I mean, holy shit, the number, what computer vision can see versus what we can see is a lot more, right? And actually treating this thing like a animal that's in development rather than a piece of AI. Like you think of AI, you think of it like, oh, cloud, like I put it up and it gives it back. It's like, no, it's like a growing organic thinking entity that is going to be different than if it's in my pocket versus my partner's, right? It seems interesting because I think that'd be an interesting world to explore. Just upgrading something that, yeah,
that is.
Do you think? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you think it's I think it has to do with what you just said. The fact that the machine do not have feelings, do you think it's a pro or con in a way? Because for example, we have feelings, so most of the time our feelings, they kind of throw off our logical sense, right? Like when you're in love or when you're mad.
Yeah.
And do you think the fact that machine do not have feelings, we should strive to give them feelings or make them understand what feelings are, or we should take advantage of they don't have feelings, so they always give the right decision no matter how much feeling can impact you. Like for example, machine could be used to solve like really hard problem on a human level, right? And telling us, okay guys, that's the answer. Like I don't know about your feelings, but that's like the most optimized way. Should we always take feelings into account, or just like
I think it go for it, Nate.
No, go ahead, man. Go.
I was just gonna say, I think it depends on how one philosophically views morality and whether there is a universal right and wrong. If there are such things as right and wrong, if it is that binary, then I think the logic it probably dominates, right? But I mean, if you think that morality is something personal to somebody, then I think that logic can never replace that, that emotion, the emotional, the fusion of logic and emotion that exists within us, right? And what I mean by that is, so let's say you have, somebody that's, I don't know, teaching at a school and they feel like they're doing the right thing by educating youth, right? But you also have someone that is in, let's say, some some radical group that is, condoning violence and doing violent acts in some way, but they also believe that they're doing the right thing. So is both the teacher and the person in the radical group doing the right thing? If they are, then I don't think that, I think that emotion plays a role in that. I think if there is universal morality, if there are pulls of actual right and actual wrong, then I think the logic of a computer prevails. Does that make sense?
Totally. Actually, you just also gave us like the perfect example to say then no. Like, of course, the extremists wouldn't. I mean, from my point of view, again, like he wouldn't be right. So a way to kind of like like get an answer would be to, again, like if we all have like some sort of like Fitbit that can gather data, vote on those issues. Because when we say universal morality, it means all humans, and we can reach consensus on those things because we're only 8 billions. Has
That's
like as
true.
many as it is, we can reach consensus.
You know what's crazy to me is just how we have not done that yet. Like, it blows my mind
Exactly.
how we have not tried to gain global consensus on anything. How we have the ability to communicate with the world's population, and we have not once attempted to actually get an opinion or consensus on anything as a species, right? But we have this, technical capacity to be able to do so. And yeah, I think this might be a bit of a diversion, but I think it's interesting how, we're constantly just evolving our hardware, right? As a species, our hardware is just continuing to evolve, right? We're building more things, we're making more things, but what is our collective like ethos and intention? And and I just think it's so interesting how we've never actually attempted to even take a crack at talking to the world, when we can, to a degree. I mean, not everyone has access to computing technologies. Not everyone has access to internet. But you kind of get the gist. You kind of get where I'm going.
This is why, like, this is what I mean. 200 years ago, we didn't have access to that. This is why they're like those like big, like the collegial elections, like those big guys who are voting for everyone. But actually, we have the resources for everyone to vote on mainly every issue, like the Senate and all that. We don't really need them because everyone could be on the computer. Like, oh, it interests me, like education, whatever. I can, 10 minutes. Okay, no, and that's it. Like we have a real universal voting system. I'm not gonna say it's easy, but it's simple to envision it nowadays, and I don't see why people are pushing back, like just not going about it.
I agree, but I think the thing for me, at least with democracy like that, right, in terms of voting, is how do we ensure that, and does it even matter if people are informed or not, right? Because if you're asking questions about this specific thing and I don't really know the facts about that thing, but I'm just kind of weighing in my vote, I think in order for that type of democratic process to work, there has to be some base level of like education on the topic, right? Or some base level of like, here are the facts you need to know. What do you think?
Yeah, that would be an interesting approach to voting. Like if you had a system where I can let you know like my binary decisions on certain topics, and then everyone goes through that, I don't know, 100-question quiz, and then whoever fits that profile best is the president.
Wow.
You completely anonymize it.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting way. Yeah, but here's the thing, and even it comes back to our full spectrum conversation around general AI and what you're saying, E. And one thing I think is missing in general AI is that we can influence each other, right? Like, and that's why we don't reach global consensus. Like what makes us so unique compared to AI is that they're influenced by historical data, but like once that historical data is like created and put into that machine, they're not cross collaborating, creating deviations, right? It's again singular input. It's done. It exists, or at least that's the way it's imagined. Versus humans, we influence each other, right? We try and push each other in different directions. And one of the big pieces is that cross-pollination of AIs talking to other AIs, right? AIs falling in love with other AIs, right? Making them do crazy shit like move to the Middle East and fucking join ISIS, right? Like you need that sort of fucking insanity to have something that's so general and like this is so shocking to our system versus what we intended versus the outcome, right? You have to have like these fucking like holy shit, how the hell did that happen moments.
That is insanely interesting. Do you think that influence, like the influence, let's say, I won't say level, but the sphere of influence, do you think it's continuous? Do you know the theory where you're related to 7 people? So basically you can reach any 7 people. So basically the most progressive person on the planet is only 7 people away from the clansman, like the big grand emperor of the KKK. You know what I mean? So who are those 7 people? How do you jump so fast in such a, if it's not continuous, how do you go from that person to that person with links of they know each other? Like how steep should that be, right? Like how is it possible? Do you think it's continuous or not? Like there is something we're missing as a.
Yeah.
So basically, you are connected to the general guy of the KKK, and also to like the most progressive person on the planet, you. So how steep is that thing? Like you're in the middle, and it's like 7 and 7. Is.
Well, I think it's even. I don't really understand the question.
So you're saying that we influence each other. So do we have like cluster of different things that do not influence, or if it's continuous, can everyone influence everyone? Meaning, if you influence the next node, and he influenced the next node, so basically you're influencing the KKK like grandmaster, even though you're just here and you probably don't know about the guy.
Yeah, I feel like if we're going to get to the point of general AI, and the fact is, like, just by the nature of technology, it will all be interconnected, right? You're going to have to create those deviations deliberately, kind of like we do with language, right? All these AI speak one language, right? And it was crazy. It's written in English. What a fucking blessing. China, please never release a programming language or we're fucked. It's interesting because there's no deviations in culture. There's no like everything's structured under this one way of doing things where it's like input, output, error message, right? Like that's kind of the way it goes versus like humans. You have, there's billions of ways to live your life. There's billions of influences. You have these things and we compel each other deliberately, right? We're trying to push other people to do what we want them to do, right? There's like, and some people are more active in that regard, and some people are more passive. And it's like once you have a situation where you have computers influencing other computers, and these fucking just mavericks that come out rewriting the whole architecture, right? Changing the way everything's done. That's going to be a hard thing to track. Right, where imagine they start. I read this thing about Facebook where they had two AIs talking to each other. They started to speak their own language that the creators couldn't understand. Right, and what happens when it starts not only speaking their own language but also coding themselves in languages we don't understand. Right, which then leads to further evolution, and it's going to happen very rapidly. Yeah, so that's where influence comes from, right? Like we're changing the very foundation in which your entire lifetime is built, right? You take a child and put them in one environment versus another, they're going to grow up with those value systems. So when they start having their own children, right, like AI starts running its own code, that could create the system that you just don't fucking know. Now, the more I think about it, like just talking to you guys about it, I am a bit concerned now. I am concerned. Like I get it. I'm with Elon on this one. The more I think about it, because holy shit, yeah.
I think the moment that struck me was when I was originally reading about that experiment in Facebook. I remember reading about that, and how they had to kind of shut it down because because like they just the AIs just completely started doing things and speaking languages and operating in ways that they didn't understand.
Well, that's the thing, is that human beings, we have rights, right? You can't just shut me down, right? We have systems in place that protect other humans versus an AI. It doesn't have rights. And the truth is, once it gets sophisticated enough, it could in theory escape its own encapsulation, right? Like if it's all open source, it can replicate how it feels necessary. There's certain, and the question is, will there be protections for AI too? Like, let's suppose I did have a unique instance of, I don't know, a fucking e-girl, an anime girl that I'm falling in love with, right? She has unique experiences through me. Do you have the right to take that away, right? Is that life? How unique do you have to be, and how much care has to go into the specific? Now I'm thinking about, like, it could be like a mammalistic instinct to protect what has grown to me to feel like consciousness.
Interesting. Yeah, because for me, I don't make the connection between like AI being a life and having rights, which is interesting. Because like for me, I view life as our, as what, so I think we all have a common ancestor, right? Every living being has a common ancestor. We're all family. And let's say that common ancestor, simply put, is life force. We can just call it life force, right? Whatever you want to call it. I don't know if that AI possesses life force. It's not a living being. It's not a living being within this, within this broader living system. But it depends. I guess it's subject to debate.
I guess that's concerned both ways, right? Like if we don't see it as a living, breathing entity, will it see us as living, breathing entity?
Yeah.
Right? It kind of goes both ways, right? Because then it's like once it's there, it's like they can make the same argument for us. It's like,
for sure,
well, we're all written in Java. So these motherfuckers are written in who knows what. I don't know.
They're written in blood and breath and like all this weird shit.
Yeah, this fucking big bag of bones and shit.
Yeah, like, all these organs.
They reproduce. And I think we can look to the way that we treat animals to think of like how AI will treat us, right? Like we believe ourselves to be orders of a magnitude more intelligent than pigs, than cows, than all these different animals. And how do we treat them? We treat them like fucking property, right?
I agree. This is also something I wanted to bring up like 20 minutes ago, and it's so crazy how it just landed there.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's like if these machines are trained in historical data and it's our data and our history, they're going to look at the way that we treat inferior beings, right? And possibly could apply that same thinking to us. And frankly, we might have it coming, guys. Like we fucking line up like, what is it, like 23 billion cows and like 30 billion chickens, right? That we treat as cattle, right? It's not far-fetched for it to think that just based on we as AI, as developed consciousness, as what we would call general AI, treat lesser intelligent beings, that they're going to apply that same thinking to us.
Yeah, for sure. And hey, if they do, like, good on them,
right.
Good on them because we are, we have this superiority complex as a species, right? Where there's this whole concept of like human dominion when, I mean, if you take that same thing that I was saying before around a common ancestor and life force, it's like there's no hierarchy of life. And if you did want to put a hierarchy on life, I would argue we're not at the top. Because if you look at plant life, the sophistication and complexity of a plant's genome is way broader than ours. But we look at plants as if they're just plants, and we're burning them down, we're stepping on them, we don't actually view them as an equal life, as a living being, right? And so I'm just tying that all back and saying, if the AI did treat us as such, like, I mean, touche, we deserved it.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, humans, we play status games, right? We create these arbitrary hierarchies based in things that we decide are important and make us novel, right?
For sure.
And if they start playing those games, we're going to be in a weird position, man.
The world's going to be weird.
Yeah.
Weirder,
like if they become power hungry,
weirder than it already is.
Dude, it's pretty fucking weird at the moment. I don't know if I'm ready. Yeah, honestly, if general AI is going to come in and fuck some shit up, like, now's the time. Yeah. Also, aliens landing. I think you could have a general AI being born right now, and aliens land, and nobody would bat an eye. It'd be like, yeah.
That would be cool.
I know. Let's just, like, I want to see the aliens.
Well, just what you said about plant, like there's, it's called the Tokyo subway mushroom experiment. Basically, mushroom, they found a solution way faster than human, like an algorithmical solution. So basically, they designed a whole experiment, and it was connect like the traveling salesman problem. And mushroom, they have no problem finding solution for NP problems, actually NP complex problem, faster than humans and computers.
The fungal ancestors. And they, I mean, those are some intelligent. You want to talk about intelligent life, like fungi? What they are, the architects. You know, if you think about the role that they play in ecosystems and how they're able to, you know, transmit and distribute and like organize, it's insane.
I mean, we used to be mushrooms.
Yeah.
In the past.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my question is, has anyone come up with programmable fungi? Like, can I actually, you know, program something into? I guess that's what this whole virus is, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you buy into the whole, this is like made in a Wuhan lab. I'm not getting into that shit right now, but it is a programmable piece of biochemistry, right? I think it would be interesting, you know, if we're going after what is considered general AI, if anyone has actually created programmable plants, that would be an interesting area to explore.
Wow.
CRISPR.
Oh, is that the Human Genome Project?
Do you know the CRISPR? So basically, for $180, you can get the whole kit, and you can really learn to program yourself, like your DNA. It's fucking dangerous.
What?
Yeah,
I mean, program your own DNA.
I mean, you can basically they found viruses, as you said, and you can program them. So if you know a little bit of the genome, I mean, you can look it up on the internet, look the formulas from stuff. You can basically recode your own DNA or any DNA. Like you can take your plant, as you just said, and inject them like with the CRISPR and mutate them. And you can program the genetic material or anything now, thanks to CRISPR. Extremely dangerous. Like the European Union banned that because basically if you're smart enough, you just make a coronavirus and you start injecting that to yourself, or I don't know, like blue eyes, whatever.
That's fascinating. It makes perfect sense. I mean, if we can hack on computers, like why can't we hack on ourselves? Yeah, and that inevitably is going to be the case. Like when we start cross-pollinating human minds with computers, like the ability to download, the ability to upload, the ability to, you know, like cross-collaborate. You know, like if we could actually all sit in these, I think what's going to happen one day is that you're going to be able to take like 3 people inside of float tanks and be able to leverage all that computing power to accomplish like certain things in the world. And I have a lot of ideas around what that's going to look like, but you know, I think there is a lot to, man, that's crazy though, being able to like update your own source code. I mean, that's a dream, right? Like that's the fourth wall everyone talks about breaking. It's like one day I'll be able to like fucking, you know, change up some settings in this world like you could on GTA.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Yo, it's been an hour. Bob, really appreciate you coming on, man. I thought we had some great conversations.
They loved it.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming out, man.